So many of us make on sewing machines 30 years older or more, and you have probably long lost the user manual or have some strange parts that you can't identify. Whether your machine is old or new, where do you call when you've lost your power cord or need a new light bulb? Today's guest, Brian Meloni of Sewing Parts Online, is talking to us about sewing machine parts, their YouTube channel, and he has also become a bit of a quilter. So grab your sewing and a cup of tea, and here's my interview with Sewing Parts Online. Welcome, Brian, to the show. Can you tell me where in the world are you coming to us from?
So we are located in Dixon, Tennessee. It's a small town about 45 minutes west of Nashville.
Nashville's a pretty big place now. Where are you in relationship to the Grand Ole Opry?
About 50 minutes away. I would say we're a little bit southwest from there. But yeah, Nashville is kind of growing bigger than I think anybody really intended, it seems.
Yeah, the whole music industry really it used to be the country music industry. Now it's practically all the music industry.
Yeah, and it's a huge tourist destination and a huge healthcare hub. It's a great city. I love living out here.
Are you originally from Tennessee?
No, I grew up in the suburbs of Los Angeles. So it's a town called Santa Clarita. It's about 50 minutes north of downtown LA.
What brought you to Tennessee?
My hometown, Santa Clarita, is a really great city, but it's kind of this little bubble. I felt like I needed to experience something more than where I grew up. And so one day when I was 23, I woke up and called a friend who had a house out here. And I said, hey, I need something different. Can I move in with you? And she said, sure. And that day I packed my bags, and I think I started at like 8 in the morning. And by 6 p.m. I was on the road headed to Nashville. No plan whatsoever.
No plan.
Yeah.
So how long have you been with Sewing Parts Online?
I joined in May of 2020, right at the height of the pandemic.
It's Sewing Machine Parts Online, isn't it? Or is it
Sewing Parts Online. Locally, they call us SPO.
So tell us about Sewing Parts Online. What do they do?
So Sewing Parts Online is the largest distributor of sewing machine replacement parts. If you need anything for your sewing machine, from a bobbin case to a foot control to a pulse motor, typically we are the biggest resource to get that from. I like to joke around and say we're the place your sewing machine technician gets his parts from.
So your YouTube channel was probably one of the first ones I found online. How long have you had your YouTube channel?
I think that they started the YouTube channel back in 2015 or so. It's been passed hands 3 times. Our first educator, Sarah Golett, she was the one that started it and started making all of like the beginner's guide to sewing videos. And then it was passed on to another educator named Trisha. And just recently, I'd say about a year ago, it was passed on to myself and my coworker, Alex.
Did you change the focus as it changed hands?
Yeah, absolutely. We've shifted from long form content to short form. I'm sure you know, because you are a YouTuber, long form content, there's so much more involved than I think people know, especially before you even set up to film. The pre-production is intense. And I joined the company right around the time that platforms like TikTok were blowing up. And so when we came in, we kind of shifted to short form, and we haven't really shifted back. We've kind of found our group of people with short form content, especially YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels. One of the goals ultimately is to create as much brand awareness as possible, reach as many people as possible. But also for us, we have found that through marketing, we've been able to develop a sense of community. And I think that has something to do with the digital landscape nowadays. In the last 4 years, people are looking to the internet to find their tribe. And so in some weird way, in our job back here, we have found a group of people that we can interact with and form really close relationships. So yes, we are trying to drive traffic to the website, but at the same time, we are trying to build and maintain relationships with our customers.
Now, do you run any online classes or lives, let's say, about machine maintenance and changing parts?
So we do live streams, especially in 2022 to the 2023. We did a whole bunch of large live stream events where we were online for 7 hours a day for like 5 days a week. They were called So Creative Live. And so, back when the pandemic happened, there were no expos or quilt shows or anything like that. And so people were missing out on the live classes, the product demonstrations, the special, discounts that you get at places like QuiltCon. So we decided to do our own version of that. And it went really well. People really enjoyed it. And we had some great classes from quilting to garment construction to embroidery. But, the virtual thing is kind of dying down. So we're at an impasse right now trying to decide if we want to continue doing live stream classes.
I have the people write down in the notes, the comment section, whether they want those online classes still.
Definitely. There's so much content out there right now being made on how to quilt and how to sew or how to do this. And you brought up a point of, are we going to do classes on sewing machine maintenance? I don't really see a whole lot of people doing classes on sewing machine maintenance. So it is something that we are interested in, but we take it very seriously. And so if we are going to start offering classes, we want to make sure that we're fully prepared, we have authority, and we know what we're talking about before we start making that content. So the intention is there, but we want to make sure we're perfecting it before we make it live.
So being on the parts side of the sewing machine, what do you see as the most replaced part on a machine?
A foot control and power cord. It's so funny. So I started with the company in customer service in the call center. The most common call I would get is, hey, I lost my foot control and power cord during a move. I need a new one. I mean, like 5 times a day I'd get that call. Other than that, bobbin cases, cover plates, needle plates, spool pins, general stuff like that.
Anybody can replace those parts. Those are not things that need a technician, it sounds like.
No, absolutely. And that's part of our bread and butter. We offer the parts, but we also offer the support. So we want customers to feel empowered to do basic maintenance and repairs on their machines on their own. And if they need assistance, we have a master technician, his name is Dennis, available to walk them through certain things. The one thing he won't get on a call about is gears. He just says it's too much. At that point, just take it to the technician. But when it comes to things like spool pins or, if your timing is off, we do have a tech line that can help walk you through that process.
Speaking of timing, do you deal with long arms as well as domestic sewing machines?
We do, yeah. We are a Grace Company dealer, so we sell the Grace Company long arm machines, and then our technician does service long arm machines. He started out in an industrial factory servicing, I think they were Jukies. So he's got 30, 40 years of experience. So he does anything from sergers to sewing machines, embroidery machines, long arms, all that stuff.
So sewing machines come from all over the world. We've got Swedish, we've got Swiss, we've got Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference in the way that these manufacturers approach maintenance?
So when it comes to sewing machines and maintenance and repairs and stuff, I would say for the most part, they're pretty universal. Sewing machines have gone through a lot of changes, especially with computerized components in the last couple of decades, but the basic core of all of them is the same. I think that there's some brands that value the in-person technician relationship more than other ones. But for the most part, I think really anybody could do maintenance on their machine, regardless of what machine it is.
Is there a lot of interchangeability between the brands? Or if you've got a Bernina, there's certain parts and they never cross with a Janome or a Pfaff?
It depends on the parts, like presser feet. Bernina's presser feet are specific to Bernina. But then there's brands like Janome, Baby Lock Brother, where you can interchange some of the presser feet or get generic options. When you start to get deeper into the machine and you get a little more complex, those parts are usually specific to the brand or the factory where the machine was made.
So did you know how to sew before you started with sewing parts online?
I didn't. I actually have a funny story about that if you want to hear it.
Sure.
I started in March of 2020, right at the height of the pandemic. I had just lost my job in the hospitality industry, and I had just started that job too. So obviously, last one in, first one cut. I was sitting at home with nothing to do, bored out of my mind, and I was like, well, I need a hobby and I need a job, and I've always wanted to sew. So I looked online to see if, a big box store like Joann's or something was hiring. And I saw that Sewing Parts Online was hiring. And I thought to myself, this would be cool. Like, this will be a temporary thing. I can get in, I can learn about sewing. And then when the pandemic is over, I can get out and I can get back to hospitality. And I don't know, there was just something about the people that we would interact with on a daily basis, especially at that time. It just seemed like everybody who was calling us so desperately wanted to make masks and wanted to help. And through interacting with them and seeing how passionate they were about sewing and quilting, I was like, there's got to be something to this. So I started learning more about sewing, and then I bought my first sewing machine and I fell absolutely in love. And now I'm here basically running the marketing and doing the education, which is really cool. Was not expected at all.
Well, you said that you've always wanted to learn how to sew. Was there a sewing machine in your home when you grew up?
Not at all. I didn't grow up with very crafty parents or anything like that. I had always had a desire to express myself creatively. So I tried music, I tried art, and none of it really clicked. But there was just something about sewing. Once I got my sewing machine here, something just clicked.
So what do you like to make? Are you a quilter, or do you prefer garments or artwork, or?
No, I dislike garments, actually. I much prefer quilts. I think there's something about the 2D-ness of it that my brain is able to process a little bit better than the 3D-ness of garments. But no, I love quilting. I feel like when I'm quilting, I get into a flow and I can kind of get lost and carried away. And it's really tranquil and relaxing.
Let's go back to when you started with Sewing Parts Online. You mentioned COVID. There was that crazy time when fabric was flying off the shelves. People were pulling old machines out. Were they not working, or were they just missing parts? What kind of support did you guys provide online?
Oh my gosh, it was intense. The first day I came in, we had, I think it was something like 12 to 13,000 unopened email requests. People were panicking to get interfacing and elastic. People were pulling their old machines down that they hadn't sewn on, in a few years. Maybe they had been in the garage or the attic and they were covered in dust. And when they went to plug them in, something wasn't working or they didn't have a power cord. So everybody rushed to get sewing machine parts so that they could make masks. And, the logistical situation back then was chaotic for everybody. We couldn't get shipments in from anywhere, any of our suppliers. So we weren't getting any bobbin cases or presser feed or anything in. So the next best option was for people to buy new sewing machines. I think that within like the first few weeks of the pandemic, we dropped our inventory on sewing machines to absolute zero. We had sold out of everything, and it took months for us to get shipments back in.
Is Sewing Parts Online a family-owned business?
It is, yeah. I'll share a little bit of the history with you. So we started as just your regular sewing and vac shop back in 1997. Our owners, George and Terry, opened up a shop where they just serviced and sold vacuum machines and sewing machines. They did that for a little while, but in 2008, they realized that there was no real good way for anybody, customers or dealers, to find the correct parts for your specific model. So what you would have to do previously is you'd have to find the parts list from the manufacturer and go through, find the part number, call the manufacturer, see if it's available. So it was this whole process, and none of the information was centralized. They saw an opportunity to make things easier on themselves, but also to make things easier for sewers and quilters around the world. And they built the industry's first ever make model finder, and it's still live on our website now. When they tell me about it, it's crazy. They literally printed out every copy of every parts list from all the manufacturers, vintage Singers, Kenmores, all the way up to brand new Baby Locks and Brothers, and they went through and manually added every single part number to this make model finder. So now anybody today who needs an obscure part for their featherweight, or maybe they have an old white rotary machine and they need a motor, they just go to our website and that make model finder is right on the front page, and it takes 5 minutes to find those parts.
So you've got parts there for the old vintage machines too. Like I see Kenmores. Well, I guess maybe they're not so vintage, but some brands that are no longer available, right?
Yeah. So the way it works in the sewing industry is typically parts on a new model are manufactured for about 10 years after the launch of that model. After that, they start discontinuing. Usually it's electrical first, and then they slowly dwindle it down to just like the presser feet and bobbins. But if it's a popular model that was manufactured for decades, like the Featherweight or some of like the old Kenmores and Vikings, they made those machines for so long that there's still a demand for those parts. So they are out there and we do carry them. We have plenty of parts for machines that are 20, 30, 40 years old.
How often do you get requests for them? Like, are they going at the door every day, or are they kind of a weekly
Yeah.
thing?
I would say we get requests for vintage sewing machine parts more often than we do for new parts, which is great because that means people out there are keeping their vintage machines alive. It's really exciting to know that people, we get a lot of calls. Well, my mom gave this to me for my 16th birthday 40 years ago, and I don't want to let it go. And so it's really great to be able to be part of the journey to help somebody keep that prized possession, that sentimental item that they have in their life as long as possible.
I have a friend who loves featherweights. And not only was she able to find herself a featherweight, she also found a never used white featherweight.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So it's my dream to own one of the celery. I think they call it celery green. It's white, but it has like this very subtle undertone of green. And they're semi-rare, but I just think they're so beautiful. I would like to own one day. So I'm very jealous of your friend.
What do you know what the going rate online is for them?
Thousands. I
Oh,
mean, like it depends on the condition and the specific serial number. But I would say if I want to buy one, I'm going to be paying anywhere between 1,000 to 3,000 for it. It'll be worth it
it'll be
one
worth
day.
it. So are featherweight parts expensive? I often hear that, oh, don't buy a featherweight because they're so expensive.
Yeah. So the bobbin case, I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, but it's pricey compared to other bobbin cases. I would say certain parts are. The rotary hook system, the bobbin case, those can be expensive. But the featherweight is such a straightforward, simple machine that if you maintain it really well, you most likely will never have to replace those parts. I think anybody who owns a featherweight or is passionate about them knows that the value of keeping that thing alive is greater than, having to replace a bobbin case once.
Mhm.
They're very sentimental and cool machines. So I think it's worth it to pay the price for those parts.
You mentioned a head technician. Do you do servicing of the machines as well?
We do, yeah. We mostly service local, and we are making plans to expand upon our tech services department so that we can take ship-ins. I think we do take some ship-ins now, but we need to make sure that we don't bottleneck him. We don't want to overwhelm him because it's just him right now. Our retail location in Dixon hasn't been the main focus of our business because we're mostly an e-commerce brand, but we do have intentions to expand upon that, bring in more technicians, and hopefully build out the storefront so that we can offer more of those services.
Yeah, it's a real concern here that all the sewing machine technicians are dying because
Yeah.
they didn't train another cohort coming through because sewing machines weren't on many people's radar, really.
Yeah, it is really unfortunate. But I feel hopeful that the younger generation will pick it up. It's a lucrative business opportunity because there is fewer technicians each year. So if there's anybody young that's watching this that's looking for a mechanic style career, I think being a sewing machine technician is a great option. There's going to be job security for a long time. And if you find a good sewing or quilting shop that takes care of you, they'll train you. And I don't know if you know this, but brands in the industry offer technician training for free. So we can, we're a Janome dealer. There's training classes that I can go to at their headquarters in New Jersey to learn to become a technician. So if anybody is interested in being a technician, I recommend finding your nearest sewing or quilting shop and see if they're willing to hire somebody, teach them, and send them to get educated. It's worth it in the long run and cheaper than a college education for sure.
Now, you just don't sell sewing machine parts. What else do you have? in your
No.
stable?
So we've worked really hard in the last, I'd say 7-ish years to expand our product range to include notions, machines, furniture, all that stuff. So we've been slowly incorporating that into our business, but the ramping up of business that we experienced in 2020 really pushed us into overdrive when it came to machines. We've gone from selling one machine a month, 7 to 8 years ago, to now we sell, I would say, between 50 to 100 a day, depending on the season, which has been really fantastic because it's allowed us to grow into a space that we didn't expect. Purchasing a sewing machine online, if you're going to make a really big purchase, it's hard to trust the process with that. And previously, I feel like the culture of the industry was to go into the shop and have the experience. But the world is changing. So we've been able to adapt to that and really ramp up our sewing machine sales, which is really great. It feels like sewing and quilting is having kind of a little bit of a renaissance right now.
So tell me about the quilt that's on your lap.
I don't know about the artist, but it looks like it was EPP hexes, and they bound each hexie with the backing. So the backing comes over and then they sewed them together. And out of all of the samples that we have, this one is just my favorite because it's company colors and because it's different. I love the irregular border. These are the type of quilts that I'm into.
Right.
I really love something that just feels different than your traditional quilt.
So those are called pot holder blocks.
Pot holder blocks.
Yes. So I interviewed Pamela Weeks earlier this year, and she wrote a book on portable quilting. And she started collecting these quilts. She's now the curator of the New England Quilt Museum. But this is her thing. And she talks about how they would ask everybody in a quilt guild to make one block, and they would make those, and then one person would sew them together. So you could basically make a quilt really quickly. But that looks like it was done by one person over time, but it's portable. So you would be making these hexes as you were sitting watching TV or on the move or whatever, and then you would just sew them together in strips and then build it out that way. I'm not sure if they're stitched on a sewing machine or they're stitched by hand.
They do look machine stitched to me with a zigzag stitch. Like it looks like the edges were joined together and they just did a zigzag to bring them together. But thank you for sharing that with me. I would say, a beginner to intermediate quilter. The quilting iceberg is so big. There's like so many things that I want to do, a million of them. And EPP, working on hexes, doing stuff with my hands, is definitely like one of the next steps I'm going to take.
Well, it's always good for a sewist to have a hand sewing project on the go. Who knows what you need to do? You need to sit in a doctor's office, or you're waiting at an airport or whatever. You can just make some good productive use of that time.
Yeah, and it's nice to have something to distract your. I get anxious, especially like if I'm in the airport. That makes me super anxious. So having something to distract your brain with your hands seems like it would be very beneficial.
So are the owners still working in the business every day?
So they're not really here every day. Their son Jeremy, that's my boss. He's the one running the day-to-day operations, and he's really the one who has ramped it up in the last couple of years. He's just great. He's a really great boss, and he runs the business very well. And he's hands-on here every single day, wearing like 5 million hats. So, but George and Terry, I think that they've paid their dues and they've done their time with the business. And so it's time for them to, relax at home and be on their farm and come in for Christmas parties and stuff like that.
It's funny, it's often the husband that has the technical knowledge of the business, but it's always the wife that runs it.
That's exactly what it is. Like, I think back in the day, she was doing the operations and the sales, and he was the one cleaning up sewing machines.
Yep. Are the colors that you like to use in your quilts, your personal quilts, different than the ones that you like to use in the projects at the office?
Yeah, definitely. When we do projects in the office, we set the intention of making sure that they look good on camera. Like, that's the priority with that. But when I work on a project personally, I want the colorway to express some sort of feeling that I'm feeling. So the quilt I'm working on right now is just a simple half square triangle quilt. I wanted something that felt nautical. I wanted something that felt like I was on a boat or I was at sea, but I didn't want it to literally be a nautical quilt. I just wanted the colors to tell me that. So that's typically how I approach my colorway when I'm doing my quiltings. I want to feel this way when I look at this quilt.
So what are you wanting to do with your YouTube channel in the future?
We're kind of at an impasse right now. We don't know too much what we want to do. I think that we would like to do more educational. We'd like to get back to where our YouTube channel started. So our original educator, Sarah, she really went deep into the beginner's guide to sewing or the beginner's guide to serging. And she talked about everything from a technical perspective. And what we've been doing lately back here is trying to talk about like the projects and like, you know, we're going to make this instead of getting into the technical stuff. So I think the goal is to get back into the technical stuff and get back into the long form. I think in order to be successful at that, we need to build a strong team. It's a lot of work to be able to do YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. So Alex and I are the only ones in the marketing department. So right now we're just going to kind of see where it goes. We are definitely prioritizing our TikTok and our Instagram over our YouTube at the moment.
So do you have a lecture or a workshop that you do at any guilds?
We don't at the moment, but later this year, we should be coming out with some stuff. Hopefully some live classes, maybe some in-person classes. Yeah, we have some stuff planned.
What is your most popular video on your channel?
Ooh, I think it's how to use an automatic buttonhole foot. I think it almost, it's like 800,000 views or something.
So what are the most popular? Do you have your videos in a playlist?
We do. We have a couple of playlists on our YouTube channel. The Beginner's Guide to Sewing is great for anybody who is sitting down on their first machine. If it's like a basic mechanical machine or a basic computerized machine, that it's a great series to walk you through basically everything comprehensive that you'll need to know about the machine and the techniques and the notions and the products. We have a Beginner's Guide to Serging. So I know a lot of people have sergers. Yeah, I mean, sergers are intimidating. Even though it's not the most popular playlist we have, I think that one is the most beneficial to watch if you're intimidated about serging, for sure.
It's the threading. I mean, you need to thread your machine at least once a month so you don't forget how to do it. I
mean, forget all that and get a serger that's got air threading loopers and an air threading needle. There's a few on the market and they're beautiful, but they are expensive.
I know. I saw the one at Bernita and I'm just going, oh, should I switch mine out?
Yeah, definitely.
It's magical, that air threader.
Yeah, it's wild. And there's like some that have like speed control and knee lift levers. They just, sergers are catching up with sewing machines in terms of the features that they have now.
So since you have access to all these sewing machines, do you get to play with them?
I do. That's the best part of my job. Yeah, I get to sit down on machines that I don't think I would ever be able to afford. I get to play around with basic mechanical machines from every brand that we carry and computerized machines and see which ones I really, really enjoy.
Have you played around with your embroidery machines?
Yes, absolutely. They're really great here. The education incentives, they allow us to take machines home and check out notions and all that stuff. So I took home a mid-line embroidery machine recently, and I've been practicing on that every night. But there is a very fancy schmancy embroidery machine in the store that I will go on my 10-minute break and go embroider on every day, just about.
I cannot believe the amount of clutter that embroidery machines have brought into my life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All the stabilizers, all the threads, because you need every single color, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to be careful when it comes to embroidery. You'll get sucked in quick.
I was lucky because I managed to find a couple of people that were getting rid of their machines. They were downsizing. And of course, they were getting rid of all their accessories. So I just bought their accessories as a big package.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to do it for sure.
Well, if people want to get a hold of you or learn more about quilting parts online, where do they go?
So you can visit us at www.sewingpartsonline.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the socials. And you can always, if you need anything for your sewing machine, if you have questions, you can't find a part, you need somebody to walk you through how to install a light bulb, anything like that, you can give us a call and we'll help you out.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, definitely, Karen. And before I go, I just have to say thank you. I've said this to you once before, the first time we met. I really admire and look up to you. I think that what you do is really special. What you've taught in some of your, especially the videos about the process of quilting, like the one you just posted about gifting yourself the gift of finished. I have taken those techniques and applied them to my sewing and my quilting, but I've also been able to apply them to my job and to my life. And it's brought me, I don't know, like a sense of like confidence and like my life is more manageable. And I never expected quilting to bring that to me. So like I said, I just really look up to you and I'm really grateful that I got to spend time with you today.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed my interview with Sewing Parts Online. It's really nice to know that there's a place online where I can find that old user manual or a presser foot. I will leave a link below to their YouTube channel, website, as well as their social media links and email. Next time you're in your sewing room, be sure to have Karen's Quilt Circle playing in the background. I have interviewed so many interesting and wonderful people on this show. Let one inspire you. And don't forget to check out last week's video. Take care, and I'll see you next time.